Well, good evening. This is Hound Dog Steve coming to you on the 12th of November, the day after Remembrance Day. And I sure hope all of you got out to a cenotaph or an area where they were celebrating Remembrance Day, and that you did indeed remember the sacrifices of the brave men and women that go out and defend democracy around the world. And of course, I sometimes think that that may be a part of the equation that's forgotten. We do remember the people who gave their lives willingly to defend democracy, but I think sometimes we forget that it was democracy that we were defending. And for those of us who remain home, I'm now of course too old to be conscripted or to be sent off to war, but it's still our young people are heading overseas all the time. And I think that it is up to us to maintain democracy for our brave men and women, boys and girls to come home to. That's our job, is to speak up when we see that our democracy is being eroded in any way, shape or form. And this is part of why I do what I do, to highlight certain things, to bring out certain aspects of our democracy or the society in which we live, and maybe some of the indications that we should be paying attention to what's going on around us. And so that leads us into our first story about Tony Clement. Okay, Clement in sexting scandal. Yes, this is our Anthony Weiner of the North. And this is the first article about Clement, and of course he basically came out and said, oh well, it's just an isolated incident, and that's that and all about it. And of course, next thing you know, the second one comes out, personal weaknesses. Oh dear, oh dear. I engaged in inappropriate exchanges that crossed lines that should never have been crossed. Tony Clement. I find it absolutely staggering that in today's age of electronic communication and the examples of people who've been caught up in these traps, of course it turned out to be a blackmail. He thought it was a consenting situation, consensual adult that he was communicating with, but this is a man who's married with 3 children. Okay, and I just absolutely shake my head that A, you would do this sort of thing when you were in public office, when you have a wife and 3 children, but secondly, that you would not be aware when we've seen plenty of examples of how this can just absolutely go wrong and blow up in your face. So I'm actually not having a lot of sympathy for Mr. Tony Clement or anyone else who gets caught out in this way, because you're playing a very dangerous game, my friend, and I think the fact that you didn't realize this is a bit of an indication as to who you are as a person. And another reason I'm not having a whole lot of sympathy for Tony Clement is because 2 years ago he headed a committee on cybersecurity, and he was actually telling people about the dangers of loose lips on the internet, Twitter, tweeting, this kind of stuff, and the fact that people were watching all the time, the risk of blackmail. Now this is a cabinet minister, and so he knows an awful lot about the inner workings of government. He is an absolute risk. And so to think that he would get caught up in this is absolutely incredible and incredibly stupid. And Tony Clement, really, you are going to pay for this in the worst possible way, because nothing is hidden today. Okay, next story. I thought this was kind of bizarre. Atheist United Church minister to keep her job. So this is a story about Reverend Greta Bosma, who speaks at Westhill United Church in Toronto, where she's been a minister since 1997, and she was in danger of defrocking due to her atheist beliefs. And so anyway, she was in a tribunal where she was being tried for heresy because she didn't follow the Bible the gospel and doesn't believe in God. And it's kind of interesting. I'm not quite sure how those two lines go together, how you can be an atheist in the United Church system. But anyways, they came to an agreement. There we go. Reverend, Greta, Bosma and church settle ahead of court hearing, some called a heresy trial. Now, they didn't exactly tell you what the settlement was, but they did say that the reason they came to the agreement was because of the cost, both in financial terms and in loss of reputation for the church, because it would probably been a front page a news item for quite a long time, because it is so bizarre. You know, you really don't expect an atheist to be preaching from the pulpit. And so I'm not quite sure what it is that you preach and why you would even go to seminary school if you are an atheist, and then try and push that doctrine down your parishioners' throats. Now, don't get me wrong, I have my own beliefs, and they're a lot broader than any religious system that I've come across. And they incorporate the whole universe, and they're more spiritual in nature, shall we say, and that God would be represented more by an energy than anything else. But yes, this is quite bizarre, and it'll be interesting to see how long this will carry on for. It says here at the end, the chairman of the West Hill Church Board, Randy Bowers, expressed delight at the outcome, saying Mrs. Bosma was a product of the church and her ordeal had been challenging. Okay, so I guess you can go to church even if you don't believe in God. And let's let it sit there. This I thought I kind of liked. Hard to watch. Former Premier Kathleen Wynne reflects on life in Doug Ford, Ontario. And there she is, sitting in a lonely chair. There is only 7 Liberals left in the Ontario government. They do not have enough seats. The magic number is 8 for party status, so they don't even get any speaking time, and so really they just go in and sit and listen to the proceedings. And she says that she tries to make it in at least 2 days a week, but the rest of the time she's doing constituency work. And I think this is actually a fitting punishment for probably the most disliked premier in Ontario's history in a long time. Certainly, probably since Mike Harris, who was a Conservative. And I think this is payback for a high-handed attitude that the Liberals got, especially under Dalton McGuinty, and was certainly carried on by Kathleen Wynne, and they really lost touch with the public. And this is what happens when you abuse or break, the public contract, the social contract, okay, because you are there at the will of the people. And this is payback. And unfortunately, we swung now to the right, and the Conservatives, the PCs, have a majority. And I don't think majorities are good under any circumstances, because it seems to me that every party comes into power with a bag of good stuff and a bag of crap. Okay, and you've got to take the crap with the good stuff. Whereas if you have a minority government or a coalition government, then they are responsible to the people, because they have to get a mandate from the masses for every move that they make. So all the good stuff gets acted out first, because they know that the people like the good stuff, and they have to get the mandate for the bad stuff. And that's why the public are always best served by a minority government. Anyway, we will see what we will see. But anyway, Kathleen Wynne says that she is having a hard time sitting there watching Doug Ford undo what she calls all of her good work. And right now, basically the jury is out on the Doug Ford government. He's done some good things, I think, so far. I think that the repealing of the sex ed in school and going back to a more bland version of that was a very good move. And it's not because I'm prudish, It's just that after having talked to several teachers privately, and who will remain nameless, all three of them said they were very reluctant to teach the new curriculum because it was age inappropriate. Okay, when you are prepubescent, you do not need to learn about anal sex. Okay, that's why you're prepubescent. You're not even thinking about those kind of things. It is just absolutely over the edge, the sort of things that were being taught. And you know, it's not that you shouldn't learn these things as teenagers or become aware of these things as teenagers, but at the age of 6 to 14, leave them alone. Yes, you can go through body parts and that kind of stuff and blah blah blah, but explicit sexual stuff, no, I don't think so. I don't think children need to know that at that age. And if they have questions, let them come to you and answer them in the most age-appropriate manner that you can. So there was that. I think that the cutting of the Toronto Council may speed up the process, but I think also that was, how can we say, a changing of the narrative. Doug Ford reduced the number of councillors in Toronto from 49 down to 25 to try and speed up the process. And I will agree that it was an absolute logjam with all of the councillors in there. They argued endlessly over minor details, bickering over just about every point that you can think of. But I think the question was not let's reduce them to get fewer councillors and that way we'll get a speedier process going on. I think the question should have been, why were 49 councillors arguing with each other? It wouldn't be because of amalgamation, would it? Where you've thrown 49 people in the same room with one pot of money, all fighting for funds and revenues for their bailiwick. So of course they're going to fight. And I'm going to make a prediction here that it's not going to change. Going to 25 councillors is not going to change anything, because now you just have 25 people arguing over a single pot of money, trying to get their fair shares worth. And halving the council just means that you've doubled the expenses that each councillor has to try and obtain for their ward. And interestingly enough, they're suggesting what we were suggesting with Citizens for Direct Democracy, that you actually have a ward council dealing only with the issues of that ward. But as I say, it's not going to change. There is going to be fighting and bickering down to the last penny, because amalgamation has not worked. It has not worked. There may have been some efficiencies, but in the end we just hired more civil servants to do the work, and that has ironed out any efficiencies that may have been found. The equalisation of pay from district to district took an awful lot of money, because there was people being paid less in some districts than there were in others. That all had to equalise out. As soon as they amalgamated, they all came under one board, and so all the firefighters, the police, all had to get equal pay. Civil servants all had to get equal pay with each other. Well, that cost an awful lot of money to do that, and it cost an awful lot in hiring of new staff to iron out all of these problems. So the expense of amalgamation always far outweighs the limited efficiencies that you get. It looks great on paper, but when you actually try and act it out in practice, it just doesn't work. So that's what I was upset about, more than anything, is that they just changed the narrative and they didn't talk about what was the real issue in the whole affair. Okay, well, that's the first of 3 stories and 2 videos, and so I hope you enjoyed those 3. Please, if you did, like and subscribe below, and we'll talk to you real soon. You take care now. See ya. Bye.